Good morning. Today is Yud Beis Shvat, the 12th of Adar, and I said Adar afterwards. And what are we in the English date? I don't know. Something like 5th, 6th. Who knows? Anyway, no, I should know. What's the date? The 5th of March. So we're learning a little, like a kitzur at the end, which is not really a kitzur because he gets into whole new issues about Amalek. And let's try to read through it, and I'll just translate it first, see if we have time. Because tomorrow, I don't know if we're going to learn tomorrow. Tomorrow is a fast day. Okay, so let's try to get through it. The reason that Amalek cannot be elevated without breaking it completely, like we said, like clay cheres, like earthenware. So we said usually all refinement, all elevation happens through the sphere of chokhmah, of wisdom. And because of Amalek, now what we understand is that this is something he didn't say before, that he taints the mind. And before we said that he taints the dat. The main thing is that he cuts off the intellect from the heart. Now we're saying something a little bit different, that he taints the mind. Therefore, wisdom has no strength to elevate it. So it says. So I think that there he's quoting from the Arizal somewhere. That's the quote. And now he says, Arizal derech Chasidut. So to explain this according to Chasidus, Yesh lomar, we need to say, Lefi aniyut dati, to the best of my understanding. Dinei muvar besefer shebo inunim. It's explained in the Tanya, Perek Yud, in 10th chapter. Dinyan tzadik gamur hu tzadik v'tov lo. That a consummate tzaddik is a tzaddik who is also good for himself. What it means is that he's taken off the garments, thought, speech, and action that are soiled by his negative actions, by his evil inclination, and he takes on new garments. And anything that is related to the other side, to the impurity in the world, he hates it consummately. There it means that the evil, that the negative has completely been removed and will never return. That's in the consummate tzaddik. And the reason is that he has elevated it, he's sweetened it, and not that he's pushed it away, and not that he's constantly fighting against it, making sure that it doesn't affect him. It can't affect him because it's already been transformed. Because if it was only pushed away, then it could awaken again. We have the same sugya, right? Tzaddik she'eno gamur is like that. Tzaddik she'eno gamur is somebody who's like that, who's constantly pushing it away, but he understands what it wants. And a consummate tzaddik, he doesn't understand what it means at all. He doesn't understand the evils, and he doesn't connect to it at all. He doesn't. It's not in his mind at all. And that is like a tzaddik who's not consummate. So what's the example? The example in halacha is very simple. We come up on Pesach, and in 4 days, in 3 days, we'll start learning Hilchos Pesach, the laws of Pesach. One of the interesting laws of Pesach is what do you do regarding something that you cooked, you baked, whatever, before Pesach. And before Pesach, it had chametz in it. Okay? Potentially it had chametz in it, but it's less than 1 in 60. Okay? So before Pesach, less than 1 in 60, let's say it had, potato starch. And the potato starch we know is, like by us, by Chabad, we don't use potato starch that's processed, because we don't trust the factory. So we say potentially there's some chametz in here. Potentially, it has a badatz eida chareidis, so they think that it's without it at all. But I have a fear that it's less than 1 in 60, and I use it to bake, and now it's definitely less than 1 in 60. So right now, it's as if the chametz doesn't exist. Right now, before Pesach, the chametz doesn't exist at all, because according to halacha, less than 1 in 60, even in min b'mino, I couldn't tell the difference between the starch and the chametz. They're all the same. 1 in 60 cancels it out. But what happens when Pesach comes in? So there's a machlokas. There's a dispute. Is it choser v'ne'or, or is it not choser v'ne'or? So according to most of the poskim, it's not choser v'ne'or. It doesn't awaken again. Because why? Because on Pesach, 1 in 60 is not enough. 1 in 60 is not enough. It has to be 1 in an infinity. So that's why we don't use anything processed, because we're not certain that it's in an infinity. So most of the poskim, they'll say it doesn't awaken because it was already canceled. It can't awaken. But the Alter Rebbe paskins that it does. He says you should be machmer. He's one of the few who paskins that way. And it's known that in certain things, because for various reasons, you can be mekel on this. But that you need to consult with. If you want to use Chabad Minhagim, you have to consult with somebody who understands. But in any case, that's an idea of choser v'ne'or, that it awakens again. Why? Because the criteria has now changed. It's not 1 in 60 anymore. Now it's 1 in infinity. And 1 in infinity awakens and the whole thing becomes chametz, according to the opinion that it awakens. So the same thing by the evil in a person. If you've only canceled it by adding a lot of good, but you haven't changed your garments completely, they're not new garments, you've only cleaned them, so the dirt will awaken at some point. It depends on the criteria. If you're only going to visit your in-laws, so it's clean enough. But if you go visit shul, there it has to be even cleaner, right? And there it may be that you would say that it awakens. The dirt, the soil on your clothing is now seen. Page 88. And I believe that this whole sugya of it awakens again is explained in the Tanya regarding the Beinoni. But by the consummate tzaddik, it's not that he's cancelled it out in number, in quantity, or in pushing it away. Rather, he's elevated it, he's transformed it. At the end of chapter 10, that's why they are called men of ascent. And what they do is, they transform the evil into holiness. So how is this ascent of the evil, how is this transformation carried out? He says, it may be that it's like this. We know there are 4 levels of impurity in the world. So the 3 lower levels, they receive their sustenance through the mid-level, which is called the klipas noga. Noga literally means luminary, right? It's a light, but it's a diminished type of light. The klipat noga, this intermediate husk, is an intermediate between holiness and the impurity. כמו שכתוב בספר של בינונים פרק ז' ואין שם בפרק כ"ד, ועל ידי שמבררים את הנפש הבהמית ומהפכים אותו לאלוקות, והיינו שעובד בבחינת אהבה ויראה כל כך שתוכו רצוף אהבה. As he explains, I think in chapter 12, וחפץ לדבקה בו יתברך, וכל לב הנפש הוא מאוד מעומקא דליבאי בחלל הימני, עד שתתפשט גם בחלל השמאלי, לקפי לסטרא אחא. So what happens? That he uses the love that he has for God. That's how he describes it in the Tanya. That he's usually dwelling in the right side, the right ventricles, the right. I don't remember what's called, the top and the bottom, but the right side of the heart. Again, this is not a history. It's not a sheer in anatomy, but it's just saying that that's how you feel it. It's on the right side, and it overflows so strongly that it lines ratzuf. It lines continuously the entire heart, including the left side where the evil inclination sits. So that's when you do tshuva, me'umka delibai. Umka delibai means higher tshuva, out of contemplation. And then it changes it, and it forces, it coerces, it submits the other side in the heart. And it changes it, switches it, transforms it from taking pleasure in the physical things of this world to loving God. And that's what it becomes its pleasure, loving God. It says here it's chapter 9, not chapter 12, like I said. And this is the level of a consummate tzaddik, that he transforms. Like we say, elevation means transformation. It's called sweetening. He sweetens, he transforms the animal soul into godliness. And this is what it means that you have refined the noga, this intermediate state of impurity, which is the separation between the holiness and the impurity. And so on. When the noga itself, when this intermediate husk becomes godliness, he turns the same thing as, wow, it's turning the, what do you call it when you have a brick? So he turns the brick into stone. It's like an alchemical transformation. You know, the alchemists, the external reading that many people had was that they were trying to transform lead into gold. But the people who understood it correctly understood that this was not a chemistry experiment. This was a question of how do you turn yourself, and your lead, you're made out of white lead, because how do you say lead in Hebrew? Oferet. So they understood that oferet, lead, is the same thing as what man was created from, because man was created afar min adama, earth from the earth, like dust from the earth. But the word for dust is the same word that goes into lead. They used the Bible. Alchemy was based on the same principles. So they used the Bible. It said this is lead. We need to turn it into gold. We have to turn it into something new, into a new type of person. So it was really, alchemy wasn't like the forerunner of pharmacy or pharmacology or any of these things. It was a forerunner of psychology. So a lot of people understood it very externally and said, "Oh, okay, let's try to do this." But that's not what they were. They were putting their teachings masking them in a metaphor that somebody could understand as chemistry. So in any case, the brick has to become stone, and this we actually learned this maimer. I think b'Torah Or Dibur Matchila in Parashat Mishpatim, the end of Mishpatim, betachat raglav k'maaseh livnat asapir. Right, that God placed under his feet, as it were, when they were at the Mount Sinai, the noblemen, the highest scholars of the Jewish people. They saw God standing, and under his feet, as it were, there was a brick that was like made out of sapphire. And what is that even? What is that saying? It was saying that this is where you need to aspire to transform the brick into sapphire. Right? The brick is something that you make out of dust. You make it out of clay, and that thing needs to shine like a sapphire. That's the same transformation as lead into gold. The same idea. והוא עניין בירור הלבנה לאבן, כמו שכתוב כאן. דאבן הוא א' בן אומר, או אותיות, אותיות דקדושה ולבינה, אותיות דלעומת זה. So he says, Aleph Ben means Evan, the stone that you want to transform it in. He says is the letters of holiness, and leveina otiyot delu'umadze, and the brick is the other side. So he's just explaining this. The brick represents what you collected from the earth, and the stone that you made, which is a sapphire stone, which is very precious and full of light, and stone that's full of light, that represents the holiness. So you transform something from the other side to holiness. And when you refine the brick and it transforms into a precious stone, as bigmar haberurim יקבלו כולם מבחינת אותיות הקדושה. So then, what does it mean? It means that's why I said it's a precursor to psychology, not to chemistry. It is what's needed so that eventually, when the time comes, you and I can speak about things like this is what we're speaking right now. These things that transform the inner self, as much as it can be transformed, and it's transformed into something holy, into a precious stone. So our letters, what we say to ourselves, it changes. It becomes a different form of speech. That's what it means that I will change the nation's language into a luminous language. That's what it means. People think that it means that they'll speak Hebrew, or they think that they'll speak some. No, it doesn't matter what they speak. The language is absolutely not important. The question is what is the content? When the content changes, and what people speak are words that transform them from depression, from futility, from fatality, all these things, they transform it into something positive, and they come to serve God, because God is all positive. You can't stand the people who are depressed. Because what are you going to do? Why are you depressed? Because of your feeling of self, because of your separateness from me. The moment you're connected to me, you're nothing like this. You're full of energy. You're full of light. So the moment that the words change, the contents change, that is what Zechariah means when he says, I will transform the language of all the people to a luminous language. It doesn't mean they're all going to speak Hebrew. They don't have to speak Hebrew. That's not the point. The point is the content. Vayem b'sefer, it should be, okay, Yirmiyahu, Yechezkel, al pasuk zeh. So it's neither. I don't understand why he says this. Here they say, Ora Torah Nach. It's from Zechariah, on this verse. Dehainu lashon hakodesh, shem otiyot dekdusha. He says, what does it mean that it will be a holy language? Not necessarily Hebrew, but the letters will be holy. Ve'umot ha'olam, and the nations of the world, יקבלו גם כן מבחינת אותיות הקדושה. They will also have holy letters in their languages. They will accept from it. They will accept the Torah. That's what it means. וזהו עניין בירור דגים הקליפות הטמאות על ידי שמרים קליפת נוגה. That's how you refine the three impure husks or the three levels of complete impurity, by refining the klipat noga, the noga level, the intermediate level. Uverur b'chinat klipat noga al yedei b'chinat chokhmah. And in order to refine klipat noga, this intermediate level of impurity, you have to have wisdom. Hainu hitgabut chokhmah denefesh elokin shemitgaberet al hanefesh habehemit. And what it means is that the wisdom of the divine soul conquers the wisdom of the animal soul. What's the wisdom of the divine soul? Number one thing that the divine soul knows how to do, nullify before God. That's its wisdom. And that becomes more important and greater. It doesn't say that the wisdom of the animal soul is wrong. But the wisdom of the animal soul is predicated on being separate from God, not seeing God in everything. So how does it conquer it? Because it comes and says, look, you're going to study science, but the purpose of science will be to find godliness. Everything's the same, but you can't say that something works if you haven't found God. I mean, okay, so it's something technical. It's not science yet. Real science means to know, is to know God. So that has to happen. That's the wisdom of holiness conquering the wisdom of the animal soul. And that's what we saw happened by Yitro, right? That he saw that God was greater than all the wisdoms that he had learned. And again, in his time, the wisdoms were like idolatry even. Because they weren't just not finding God, they were going against God. כמו שכתוב בתורה ופרשת מקץ, דיבור אתכם מי כהשם אלוקינו המקביל לשבת. He quotes here he cites another essay from the Alter Rebbe. ובדיבור המתחיל והישמע יתרו הנ"ל, and the ישמע יתרו that we just learned. וגם בכדי להפך הנפש הבאמת לגמרי לאלוקות, יש לומר שהוא על ידי הביטול, שלמעלה מטעם הדעת, like we said, it has to be with nullification, because that's what it means to have wisdom from the holiness. ויש לומר שמה שכתוב בספר שבונים להימנע מרומקא דליבה הוא בחינת רעותא דליבה שלמעלה בחינת המוחין שבראש. In any case, it means from the crown. We won't get into this note. יש לומר, כמו שכתוב בדיבור מתחיל, ועשו אהרון בספר רל"א, from the Rebbe Moara, שעל ידי השכל בא לביטול שלמעלה מטעם ודעת. He says that the way that you come to bittul, to this nullification, is through the mind. ובחוכמה יתברירו, אם כן, סוף כל סוף על ידי בחינת החוכמה, ושאין כן עמלק. So in the end, you need wisdom. So that, I think, like I said, I'm guessing that that's what the Arizal said. And so in Chasidus, the meaning is that you need to have nullification in order to refine the animal soul. ובחוכמה יתברירו, and through wisdom, they are all refined and rectified. שמברר בחינת קליפת נוגה, שהטוב יתעלה והרב נדחה. And then the good rises from the klipat noga, from the intermediary husk, because it's half and half. And the negative falls down. And then it says, if you've won with noga, then you've won with everything. So what is this like? This is like the situation today in Israel. You have to know this. The klipat noga, what's the klipat noga in Israel today? It's the army and the police. They're the klipat noga. They're half and half. It depends who rules them. If they're ruled by one type of government, they serve the other side. If they rule by a good government, if there ever was such a thing, if there ever will be such a thing, so they'll push in the right direction. Who define who? So like, if you can change their way of thinking, then it doesn't matter what they're being told. And in fact, they will change everything else. What are the other klipot? So the other klipot are in order. First of all, the what we call the media, because the media is entirely swamped with Western liberal progressive values. They don't believe a word out of the Torah. It's changed over the years, but they really, the people who decide there, the editors, the people who run the producers, they don't believe a word. Then you have the Supreme Court here. That's the second klipa. And they are completely awash with Western progressive values. Completely. And the last one is the government. The government, yeah, sometimes it could change. You can go from here to there to here. In any case, you need to have the structure in your head. Those are the three impure husks, entirely impure. Again, not because the people are bad people; they're good people, but they're so awash in these values that they can't tell between their left and their right. And then the police and the army, they're stuck in the middle. Now it's a very interesting thing. Where's the army? For years, the army was completely in the same place. Now it's not clear. It's changed a little. The top brass are still awash in these values, but anything underneath the brigadier generals and down are all with the potential of being good. Okay, so it needs to be discussed some more. We'll see if we get a chance before we're almost finished.